It's one of my favorite movies ever, but I'm not sure who this movie is for. It's a movie with talking farm animals by a really interesting director, George Miller. This is Babe, Pig in the City, the sequel to Babe. Let's talk about why I think this is underrated, coming up next. Babe, Pig in the City has long been one of my favorite movies. I have no trouble admitting that, but it is pretty bashed on the internet. It's only getting a 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb. That is pretty bad. Anything under 6 typically means it's not very good, according to a wide range of people. And of course, this movie has been out for 20 years, so there's been a lot of time to try to reevaluate it. Also, Letterboxd does not like this movie very much either overall, although some people are fans. I say some people are fans because when this movie came out, believe it or not, this is 1998, both critics, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, put it in their top 10 in the year in which it came out. It was in their top 10 movies for the year 1998. And Gene Siskel even put this at the number 1 spot of the year.
Roger, do you remember how jacked up we were when we first reviewed it? We haven't been that excited about a movie in quite some time. This was an easy choice for me.
Well, it's also number 7 on my list, Gene. It's a great film. It's a wonderful film.
First, we should say this movie is a sequel to Babe, which was a surprise hit, an Oscar-nominated movie. It was nominated for Best Picture. You know, it won the hearts and minds of people. George Miller didn't direct that. He produced it. But it's a really charming and fun movie. Everybody should watch it. It's great for kids. Babe, I highly recommend it. And I imagine one reason this movie is not liked on the internet is if you come to Babe, Pig in the City and you expect more, just like Babe, you are going to be sorely disappointed. This movie is quite different tonally in terms of its ideas. This movie begins, though, and it hits you in the face, because it's the farmer in the face. Farmer Hoggett, who's this warm, charming guy in the initial movie, is hit in the head. The farm stops working. His wife has to go take the pig to a sheep herding competition, and she's got to go fly to a city. She needs money because the bank's going to foreclose on the farm.
Before long, 2 men showed up. 2 men in suits. Men with pale faces and soulless eyes. Such men could have come from only one place: the bank.
This movie is very sad and dour in a lot of ways if you start to think about what it's about. People foreclosing on the farm, people losing their farm, people getting hit in the head and nearly dying. That comes up within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the movie. It doesn't stop there, because when the farmer's wife and the pig go into the city is a vast metropolis full of all kinds of things. Here you have the outsiders coming in to a big urban place, the rural or townsfolk coming into a big city, the typical contrast, all kinds of stories, especially in English literature. This is Australian, I know, but English literature about the city versus the country. Movie sides with the country because Babe, the pig, the farm animal, gets lost in the city, and then the farmer's wife has to go find them. She runs into a bunch of trouble, the pig runs into a bunch of trouble, and a bunch of weird things. The cityscape in this movie is pretty bleak. Now, everybody finds a home in the city, and I'm not going to spoil it beyond that, but it's a very beautiful, I think, wonderful movie home. One of the better movie homes I've ever seen in movies, and one of the better cityscape views I've ever seen in movies. Really interesting, imaginative take on what a city is from a rural person's or farm animal's perspective when you see Babe peeking out of the city, seeing all the possibilities, but also all of the dangers. I gotta say, I don't like big cities either, Babe, so I understand exactly where you're coming from. The house is kind of a shelter, but there's people outside the house who don't like it. As a metaphor for the people viewing this movie, they want to shut this movie down, hate it, and dislike it, partly because I think the tone is so bleak. Actually, I think George Miller's direction always seems pretty angry and aggressive to me. A lot of moving cameras that whiz around during really tense scenes. He also likes to make things centered, and he makes things too symmetrical when he does that. It gives an uneasy feeling when things are at the dead center of the frame, I think. And then some of the material in here, you have children dying in hospitals, or very sick children in a hospital. You have a police state in the movie. It goes on and on from there. They actually have a vision of the afterlife in this movie. And also the city is trash. It's full of pollution. And so there's so many things that this movie is talking about, problems with the real world. But I like it because it shows you how a character like Babe, a young, innocent, naive sort of, wouldn't be a leader, but he ends up being a leader, kind of a savior figure, how that happens. The movie is dealing with quasi-religious myths. It's also talking about how it feels to be, like I said, a rural person entering an urban area or a big city area and having that feeling of angst and dread and uncertainty and loss and loneliness and isolation, and it just goes on. I like the characters in this movie. I like Thelonious Monk, one of my favorite jazz piano players. It was funny to see Thelonious Monk. Also, the chimpanzees in this movie, so well voiced, one by my favorite comedian, Stephen Wright. There's character development here. There's existential crises for the farm animals. There is a wild change of emotions from peaceful and calm to awful terror kinds of stuff happening in the movie. There's a very strange sequence at the end of the movie in which George Miller is quoting himself. You might know, I said his direction is angry and aggressive. You probably know him from the Mad Max series and that punk science fiction stuff. He quotes his own work, which is Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome, a very famous scene in that movie in which there's a sort of a battle royale between two people and the famous chant, 2 men enter, 1 man leave. It kind of shows up in this movie in the end. George Miller, you have to remember, is a doctor. This is very interesting. And he was a doctor before he became a film director. And he's very critical of the medical establishment in general in this film, particularly the movie Lorenzo's Oil. But here, charity balls for sick patients. We see sick patients in this movie, how they suffer, how the farm animals, other poor people try to cheer them up. And then that contrasts with the rich people at their charity ball. It's a very biting scene at the end of this movie when there's order and the farm animals come in and make chaos. I've always enjoyed that scene, though, so hopefully you do too. I think this is a work of great imagination. I think it's a unique movie within the scope of all movies, especially children's movies. I think this is a children's movie, but it's one of those dark children's movies that maybe only a few adults, a few children can stomach. It's not that gross or troubling, but it does have some darker moments to it. And so for that reason, maybe people don't like it. But I think the imagination is just brimming all over this movie. There's wonders galore all over the place as we jump to this movie with the house and the city and all the animals and all the things that happen to Babe and what Babe is up to. I really like the character development in this, so I do think this was underrated. It's a movie I'm still going to continue watching for the rest of my life. I don't apologize for it. I think it's a good movie, kind of praising rural townsfolk or small town people in a way, and helping us understand how they might perceive the world. So I kind of like it for that reason too. What do you think of Babe Pig in the City? Let us know in the comments, and please subscribe for more great content. Thank you. Have a great day.